The dog didn't stop barking, even after the command was reversed. Its front paws scraped the pavement, claws digging into broken concrete. Foam stained the sides of its muzzle. The leash trembled in the officer's grip, but the command had already been given. The handler's hand still hovered near the release button, even though the old man was on the ground now. He hadn't moved in almost a full minute, not since the dog lunged, not since the badge hit the pavement, not since Jason Statham stepped forward without saying a word. He wasn't shouting, wasn't flinching. His body was still, completely still, as if he'd stepped into the scene from a frame that didn't belong to this world. The blood wasn't his, neither was the badge, but the silence now, that was his doing. Three officers stood frozen, each one processing the scene from a different angle of fear. Not fear of the dog, not even fear of guilt, fear of recognition. Jason Statham didn't look at them. He only looked at the old man. And the old man, half curled behind a row of dumpsters, one sleeve torn clean off, stared right back. It was the same man from years ago, the one Jason had never stopped looking for. 12 hours earlier, the back alley behind Rosen Plaza was its usual self, slick with discarded grease and bleach runoff. The bricks along the service corridor were damp, even though it hadn't rained in days. An old man with a limp in one leg and a cart full of wires moved quietly through the back lane, never asking, never stopping. His parka hung like wet paper, tattered at the edges. The kind of figure the city pretended not to notice. He paused at the gate not to rest but to watch. Ahead of him, two security staff unloaded meat trays from a delivery truck. One of them tossed a half-empty water bottle to the side. The old man tracked its arc, then stepped forward and picked it up, still capped, still cold. He tucked it into a side pouch of his cart, moved on. Not a sound. He crossed into the shadow cast by the building's overhang and looked up once, not at the security guards, not at the cameras, but at a window 4 stories up. Then he disappeared behind the bins. Across the street, a black unmarked cruiser idled behind a produce van. The driver, plainclothes, sleeves rolled, watched the old man vanish around the corner. He spoke into his shoulder mic. No one else in the car moved. The man leaned forward, squinting. "That's not just some bum," he muttered, not loud enough for anyone to respond. Jason Statham was exactly 6 blocks away. His truck sat idle beside a loading dock, engine off, windows cracked. His hands rested on the steering wheel like he hadn't moved them in 20 minutes. His face was unreadable calm, except for the tension in his jaw. Then his burner phone buzzed. No ringtone, just a single sharp vibration. He checked it, an address, Rosen Plaza, no name, no message. Jason stared at the screen for several seconds as if waiting for a second text. None came. He set the phone down, slowly rolled up the window and opened the door. The old man had reappeared behind the deli's back lot, pushing his cart in a slow semicircle toward the retaining wall. A child passed by on a bike and dropped a quarter. The old man didn't look up, but 5 seconds later he bent and picked up the coin. Not for himself, he placed it on the wall beneath a cracked tile, purposeful. 2 officers exited a squad car near the end of the alley. They didn't say anything. They just walked, deliberate pace. One unholstered a baton and tapped it against his thigh. Not loud, not aggressive. Just a rhythm. The old man didn't look at them, but he adjusted the cart, angled it slightly toward the wall, then moved behind a dumpster again. The officers slowed, one of them snorted. From inside the building, a third man, lean, high-rank, sharp eyes, stepped out of a side door. Civilian clothes, gun on hip, he nodded at the uniforms. A silent signal. The younger cop didn't hesitate. He spoke into his mic. Unit 4 requesting K9 presence. South Side Rosen Alley, non-compliant vagrant. Jason Statham passed the same block 2 minutes later. He didn't break pace. The buzz of the city dulled around him as he walked. No phone in hand, no weapon visible, just a steady gait, head slightly down, eyes tracking shadows. A siren passed on the far avenue. He didn't flinch. Behind him, a digital billboard looped a food delivery ad, images flickering across the glass. Jason didn't even glance. But in the reflection, his eyes were watching the second-story fire escape to his right. Old habits, still useful. The K9 unit arrived 5 minutes later. Black SUV, red emergency strobes flashing low. The handler stepped out with the leash already coiled around his forearm. The dog, a massive black shepherd, barked once and crouched. The old man stood still. The cart hadn't moved. The baton cop pointed with 2 fingers. Under that overhang. Just sitting there. The handler nodded, said nothing. Jason Statham turned the final corner and saw them, the alley, the dog, the uniforms, the man. But it wasn't the scene that stopped him. It was the stillness of the old man. His knees were slightly bent, feet spaced apart. One hand just above his ankle like it had muscle memory. Like he'd stood that way before. Not out of fear, out of training. Jason stopped walking. From the rooftop of the corner gym, 2 officers with binoculars watched the perimeter. One of them tapped the other. That guy. The one just stopped. Looks familiar. The other frowned, said nothing. Below them the handler dropped the leash. The dog exploded forward. The old man didn't move. But the second the dog launched, Jason Statham did. 2 strides forward, not fast, not loud, just perfectly timed. He stepped between the dog's line and the dumpster wall, not to fight, not to deflect, just to interrupt. The dog froze. Mid-lunge. Its claws scraped concrete, teeth bared, but it didn't connect, not with the man. Not with Jason, because Jason Statham had already locked eyes with the handler. No shouting, no violence, just presence. And it stopped everything. Behind them, the supervising officer had stepped back but tripped on his own boot and dropped his badge. Blood from a scuffed eyebrow trailed down his cheek. The old man finally moved. He crouched slightly, picked up the badge and held it out, not to mock, to return. Jason didn't reach for it. He was still watching the dog, and the dog was still trembling, not barking now, just frozen. Jason Statham finally spoke, only to the handler, 2 words, quiet. Absolute. And the leash was pulled back. The dog backed away, almost reluctantly. The handler didn't look at Jason again, but the old man did, and Jason gave him a nod, the first they'd exchanged in over 15 years. Jason Statham didn't speak as the dog backed off. The handler gripped the leash tighter, hand trembling, but said nothing. Behind him, the supervising officer wiped blood from his brow and muttered to no one in particular, trying to salvage control. But there was no control left. The silence had claimed it. Jason Statham stepped forward once, slowly. The alley still smelled like old oil and meat fat. The kind of place where nobody bothered filing reports. The kind of place where people disappeared without headlines. The old man stood beside his cart now, one hand on the handle, the other still loose from years of shoulder damage. He looked up once, not at the dog, not at the officer, but at Jason. They both knew. The cops didn't, not yet. The K-9 unit was pulled back without another word. The supervisor barked something into his radio, frustration leaking through forced calm. No apology, no reprimand, just retreat. But Jason Statham didn't turn away, he waited. And the old man, silent all this time, shifted slightly. Not because he was afraid, because he was remembering. 10 years earlier, Jason Statham had crawled from a flip squad car in this very alley, lungs half collapsed, leg pinned. Someone had dragged him out. Someone who didn't wait for thanks. That man, the man nobody could ID, had vanished. Until today, Jason didn't speak to him now. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about a reunion. It was about who gave the order to release a dog on a man not fighting back. Jason turned and walked out of the alley, slow, composed. But every step held weight. He crossed 2 streets. Entered a closed-up storefront with a busted neon light still buzzing above the door. Inside, behind a reinforced steel panel, a woman glanced up from an old typewriter, mid-40s. Black tank top, short dreadlocks, gun tucked under the desk. She didn't smile, just nodded. Jason said only one thing, pull footage. She already had. On the monitor, the K-9 scene was crystal clear, not from city cameras. From one she'd placed weeks ago without telling anyone. Then Jason leaned forward, scanned the sidewalk behind the cruiser. She tapped keys, zoomed. And there it was, a second man, different build, different walk, holding a phone, paused long enough to snap something, then gone. Jason's eyes narrowed, freeze frame, enhance face, then trace. She was already on it, back in the alley. The old man was gone, his cart gone too. All that remained was the quarter, still tucked beneath the tile on the wall. But beside it now, tucked neatly under a loose piece of newspaper, was a black patch, frayed edges, burned at one corner. It was an insignia patch from a tactical response unit decommissioned 8 years ago. Jason had worn the same one once, and there were only 5 men assigned to that unit. 3 were dead. 1 disappeared, and 1 had been watching. By sunset, the alley was roped off, not by police, by cleanup, city trucks, no markings, men with clipboards, not the usual crew. Jason Statham returned just as they were tossing trash bags into the bin. One man, mid-30s, Hispanic, tight fade, sunglasses even though the sun was gone, eyed him warily. "We're clearing this whole row." "City order," he said. Jason didn't answer. He walked straight past the man toward the dumpster. It was empty. Too empty, sanitized. Even the blood smear was gone. He knelt, checking the concrete. A faint scrape, fresh. Cartwheel drag. The man who saved him hadn't just vanished, he'd been moved. Jason called the burner. No one picked up. But 2 minutes later his phone buzzed back. No number, just a single phrase: "Don't follow the badge. Follow the leash." Jason stared at the screen, the leash, not the order. The handler, back at the precinct, the handler was already inside. He was giving a statement, loud, sweaty, blaming the homeless man for being unstable, unresponsive, suspicious. He never mentioned Jason Statham's name. Jason arrived 5 minutes later. No badge, no uniform, just the silence. The front desk tried to stop him. He didn't speak. By the time the handler saw Jason in the hallway, it was too late to backtrack. The room emptied. Jason closed the door behind them. He didn't raise his voice, he didn't threaten, he just asked a question. "Who told you to drop the leash?" The handler hesitated, then cracked. "It wasn't the supervisor," he said. "It came from someone higher." "How high?" "I don't know, I just got a message. Just said target confirmed, confirm contact. I thought it was about a weapon, not some guy in a parka." Jason didn't blink. He left the precinct 2 minutes later. But now he had a phrase: target confirmed. And it wasn't about the old man alone. Someone had run the order through official channels, masked as a field alert, someone with clearance. Jason drove out of the city, past the train yards, past the limits, to the old water treatment plant where he used to train in blackout drills. Inside the side storage unit, he found what he'd buried years ago: a ledger, names, call signs, missions, and on the third page, scratched in pen beside Unit 5, was a name circled twice: McTavish. Last seen, discharged, status, unknown. But now he was cleaning cities one ghost at a time. Jason Statham stared at the wall of the bunker, his shadow stretched across the faded map like a scar. Strings, pins, note cards, faces, some crossed out. Others marked with numbers, years, or acronyms no one in the current precinct could decode. But there, beside the dusty ledger and burnt patch, was a square space, once blank, now pinned with the quarter he'd recovered from the alley. The quarter had a scratch through the headside. That wasn't random, it was a signal, and only one man in Unit 5 used quarters as markers. They called him Glass, not because he broke easily, because he could see through lies before you said them. Jason thought he was dead. Now someone was hunting him. He left the bunker before sunrise. The old SUV moved quiet down the service road, windows down, no lights. Ahead of him, fog curled around the chain-link gates near the decommissioned rail yard. Jason passed it slowly. No cameras, no patrol, but someone had been here. He saw the cigarette ash before the turn, fresh, still warm. He followed the tire marks through the gravel trail behind the old gravel mill. It curved toward a collapsed fence, then vanished into brush. Jason parked, stepped out, and listened. Nothing. Then a low clink, not metal, glass. He turned toward the slope. Halfway down, tucked between a broken shipping container and an old water tank, was the old man, same coat, same limp, but now seated cross-legged, back straight, and holding a silver shard of a cracked mirror. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Jason didn't speak. Neither did he. They just stared for a moment. Then the old man set the mirror down, stood slowly, no weapon, no expression, and walked toward Jason like they were meeting at a cemetery, not a reunion, a reckoning. Jason didn't ask what happened in the alley, he asked who called the leash. The old man answered with silence, and then turned his body slightly to reveal something stitched into his coat lining, an old patch, but not tactical. Judicial Counterintelligence Division, black ink, no serial. Jason had only heard the name once. A shadow op run years ago to monitor rogue judges, state-funded mercenaries, and international fund laundering through domestic agencies. It was dissolved officially, but unofficially it went underground. Jason finally understood. This wasn't about the dog. This was about erasure. Jason Statham and the old man sat inside the rusted container for nearly 30 minutes. No chairs, just crates. On one crate sat a broken radio, the dial turned to a station with nothing but static. The old man picked up a stone and began carving slow marks into the floor, vertical lines. One after another, Jason counted 17. 17 field agents wiped from internal databases. One of them was listed as dead, Jason's name. The old man looked at him now not like a friend, not like a savior, like a man who should have stayed gone. Jason nodded once. He understood. Someone had pulled his name back into rotation, which meant someone was rewriting the old playbook and resetting the board. Jason stood. The old man didn't. He simply slid a small device forward, a thumb drive wrapped in black tape. Jason took it. On its side, a single letter etched in nail scratches. R. That wasn't a name. It was a clearance code. Jason dropped the drive at the typewriter woman's safe house that afternoon. She didn't ask questions. She plugged it in, and the feed that opened wasn't video. It was a voice memo. Old cracked, recorded through a tactical throat mic. Jason leaned forward. The voice that played wasn't the old man's. It was the handler's, the one with the dog. He was on the radio the night before the alley. He said one thing. We have confirmed visuals on our return. Repeat, our return. Subject glass. Order, final clearance. Suppress. Jason pulled the plug. That word suppress wasn't normal. That wasn't protocol. That was a ghost word. Code used when someone needed to vanish without autopsy, without report, without legacy. Jason had heard it once before. It had been used on his file, back at Precinct Archives. Jason Statham stepped through the stacks of files like a stranger in his own past. His name wasn't in the system, not as active, not as retired, only as pre-cleared contractor status, expired. That was a death tag. He ran the handler's name. Nothing came up. He ran the supervisor's badge ID, redirected. He ran the leash code embedded in the K9 collar. Finally, something hit code string. RS-13 JUD, Judicial Suppression Tier, active. Jason stepped back from the screen. In the reflection, he saw the quarter again, still in his palm. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it the whole time, but now he did, and he remembered. There weren't just 5 men in Unit 5. There was a 6th, R. And R wasn't a man, it was a designation. Someone above Unit 5. Someone who stayed off all maps, and someone who knew Jason was looking outside the station. The sun was low again. The wind changed direction. Jason stepped out to the lot and found his truck untouched, but on the windshield no note, no message. Just a tiny, familiar scratch on the glass, a quarter edge. He looked across the street, no one there. But that's not where he looked. He looked up, on the rooftop, just for a second, the shimmer of movement. Gone before he could blink. Jason didn't chase, he walked. Because this wasn't about reaching someone now. This was about drawing them out. He walked back to the alley, back where it started, back where the leash was dropped. And this time, he stood in the exact same place the old man had stood, 1 foot forward, one hand by his leg, the other behind his back. Not defiant, just familiar. He stayed there for 10 minutes. No one came. But someone was watching. He could feel it. And for the first time in years, Jason realized he wasn't just a survivor of the old system. He was now its last witness. A storm built overhead like a slow inhale. Thunder didn't crack yet, it hummed. Heavy clouds dragged shadows over the alley where Jason Statham now stood. Still. Just like the old man had. The exact brick line, the exact bin placement. The difference was Jason wasn't unarmed. He scanned the rooftops. He wasn't expecting someone, he knew someone was there. Not from intuition, from history, from scars. He waited as the first drop of rain fell. Then another. Then the sound of gravel shifting behind the dumpster and the click of a bootlace catching. Jason Statham didn't flinch. The figure stepped forward. A woman, early 50s, white, cropped silver hair, broad shoulders. No uniform, but the stance said training. She looked down at him from above the steps of a fire escape. She didn't speak. Neither did he. She tapped a finger to her temple twice. The old field sign. Jason's reply was slower, just a tilt of the head, not confirmation. A question. She came down 2 rungs. You should have let Glass go. Jason Statham stayed in place. Rain darkened his shoulders. His eyes never left hers. They tagged him a long time ago. Your name too. Your badge just kept you out of the kill list. Jason said nothing, but his body tightened just slightly. She sighed, 1 foot on the ladder. The file you pulled from the archives, you think that was real? Jason's jaw shifted. Not an answer, a warning. She looked tired, not from age, from compromise. I told them you'd dig, that you'd still follow breadcrumbs, that the coin wouldn't be enough. Now Jason moved, just 1 step. You ordered it, she shook her head. I passed it down. There's a difference. He wasn't supposed to still be out here. You know how long you have to live to be erased and still get bitten by a dog for standing in a public street? Jason didn't answer. Glass was off book since '09. Nobody was supposed to remember him. You blew that open. Jason took another step forward. Her hand twitched near her belt. Don't, Jason said low, not loud but final. Then silence. A strange, thick silence between two people with shared shadows. Her lip curled, not in a smirk, but something sadder. You don't walk away from this, she said. You poke this deep enough and you won't find corruption. You'll find foundations, pillars. Jason didn't blink. Then we burn the pillars. A distant car alarm echoed. She hesitated, then slowly raised both hands, not in surrender but withdrawal. She stepped back into shadow. Rain blurred her outline until she was gone. Jason stood alone. Inside the safe house, the flickering laptop was still open. The waveform from the handler's call kept replaying. In the background, a faint second voice was now audible, one that hadn't been there before. Digitally buried, the woman at the laptop, May, leaned in, replayed it, this time slowed. Suppress glass, confirm retrieval, Jason compromised. She looked over her shoulder at the door, but Jason wasn't back yet. She ran the trace on the IP. It pinged once. Then a blank white window replaced the screen. Her power cut out, darkness. She reached for her flashlight and flicked it on. The beam fell across the wall. Every photo, string, and marker Jason had built gone, replaced with a single paper, a printout from a thermal fax machine. It showed a group photo from 1996. In the back, Jason Statham, slightly younger. In the center, Glass, and in front, the woman from the alley. The fax had a line in thick black ink, still breathing, still watching. Back on the street, Jason moved through the night like a shadow between headlights. He wasn't going home. He was hunting, but not for revenge, for truth. He entered the old municipal building, condemned for years. No security, no guards, but power still ran to the elevators. Only one floor was accessible, B4. The elevator doors opened to silence. No cameras, just pale green light panels that flickered overhead. As he walked forward, the temperature dropped. Jason's steps echoed against the concrete. At the end of the hall, a single door waited. No label, just a lock, fingerprint only. Jason raised his hand, hesitated, then pressed his thumb. The light turned red. Denied. He pulled out the scratched quarter, looked at it again. Then inserted it into a slot near the door that shouldn't exist. Click, it opened. Inside, the room was a library. Rows of VHS tapes, printed photos, handwritten dossiers. Cabinets labeled in code, one marked Judicial Behavior Modification Trials, 1991-2014. Jason stepped in and began scanning, row after row, then he stopped. A single photo lay at the edge of a cabinet drawer. The homeless man, Glass, in uniform. Behind him stood 5 other men, but one stood in shadow, face almost invisible. Jason tilted the photo. The man in the shadows had his build, same stance, same scar on the left hand. He flipped the photo, scribbled handwriting on the back, 6 of us. One walked away, not who you think. He turned back to leave, but the hallway lights were off. The elevator button flickered rapidly. Jason reached for his weapon. The elevator dinged, but the doors never opened. Instead, a small mail chute opened near the floor and a single envelope slid out. No return address. No stamp. Just a message: you found the first room, now find the last witness. Jason stared at it for a long moment. Then the lights shut off completely.